I'm Shy,
And I'm Alex.
and you're listening to BL in the Air, where we talk about Thai BL TV shows, dramas, all that sort of thing. Today we're going to be getting into our part two of covering the show My Stand-In. If you haven't listened to part one, that's the one we posted last week, so I'd go listen to that first. Because this episode will cover basically the second half of the show, so episode 7 to the final episode. But before we get into that, what's in the air with you today, Alex?
Um, what have I been watching? Oh, I started watching Monster Next Door.
Oh yeah, what do you think about it?
I'm not super crazy about it, I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, is
Um,
it just the first episode that's out so far?
no, it's I think like episode like 6 or 7 is already out.
Really? Did they release a bunch at once?
So it
Or
started at the beginning of August. It's been out for a month.
okay, dang.
Um, so I don't know if they're doing 2 episodes a week.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just like so behind on shows in
Yeah.
general. I feel like that one I was like I heard when it was about to come out and then I just like kind of forgot about it.
Yeah, I was really excited for this one.
Hmm.
And then it turned out to like not be what I thought it was. And I think that's what's put me off.
So like
Um,
what is it, would you say?
Yeah. So like the premise was like these two people that live next door, like in I don't know, dorms, I guess. Right? And one of them's really loud and the other one's like super quiet. And so like the one that's super quiet gets really annoyed with the one that's really loud and like leaves a like note under the door of like, hey, I have an exam tomorrow. Can you shut up? Basically, like, but
Hmm.
nice. And and then somehow they start talking on the balcony to each other. But there's like it's a wall, so you can't see into the other person's balcony. So they don't know what each other looks like.
Hmm.
And like they don't run into each other for like a really long time, like in that, so that they really just don't know. And there's like one point where um the loud one's friends have like figured out who the quiet one is, and like they've run into him a few times, and like anytime like the louder one figures like finds out that like the other one's around, like he goes and hides to purposely make sure like they don't meet, because the other one's like the quiet one's really shy and doesn't really want to meet.
Hmm.
Um and I thought they were going to play on that like a lot more, but they don't really show like their relationship building on that. They just kind of speed run it.
Oh, that's like such a pet peeve of mine. Cause like I'm a person I like to see how the relationship develops.
Same.
And yeah, I hate when like this is kind of how I felt when I started watching Love Sea and like they meet and their relationship develops and then like bam, it's like months later and I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like we just missed all of that development.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of what happens here, because they like vaguely mention that they've like talked a lot on the balcony, even though you only see like 3 or 4 times that they've actually talked on the balcony. And like it doesn't take long for like the louder one to be like, "Let's date," even though we haven't met, right? Like,
Oh
and it's
God,
like,
yeah.
what is happening? I'm like, I'm not emotionally invested enough for you two to date, you know?
Yeah, right.
Um, and then there's some, I don't want to say animal abuse, but really it's animal abuse. Um, the quieter one, he has a pet turtle that's in a box that's like probably not even like 1 square foot,
What?
right? It's such a small cage for this animal, and the entire time, every time they show the turtle, he is desperately clawing his way out of the glass.
What? Why?
I I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. And like the guy that owns the turtle is like super like invested in taking care of him and all this, and like really like the turtle is super important to him. And it's the comment I see a lot on like social media too, of everyone is like, why is the cage so small? It is miserable for this turtle. What are you doing?
Okay, it's probably supposed to be a metaphor for the quiet guy being in a tiny apartment trying to expand or something like I don't know, meet new
I don't
people, but
I don't know, but
that's weird.
it's really frustrating to see how small of a cage it's in. And
No.
how it's literally, like, clawing at the glass seat every time the camera's on it.
Oh
And I'm like,
no.
I hope when it's not filming that they have it in a more appropriate like age.
Yeah, I hope so too. That's like kind of concerning.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, especially like turtles, like that thing's gonna outlive you.
Yeah. So, but besides that, like the actors are really cute. I think both of this it's either like their first show or like really early on,
Hmm.
maybe in their careers, but like they're doing like fine. Like it's it is what it is. It's just it's more typical day in the life college kid than I had wanted. But yeah, um, what's in the air with you?
Well, very slowly. I finished Wandy Good Day, like officially. I know last
Oh,
time we like did an episode, I was like had like one episode left, but I finished that episode. Um, and yeah, I loved it. I highly recommend the show for
it
everyone,
was
to be
so
honest.
cute.
It is so cute. I feel like it's just such a good example of a show that is like most of the show is focused on their relationship with like a couple side things for their careers. But I think the show did such a good job of like their relationships development and like I love the characters. I love the supporting characters. I just like overall it was just a romp. It was just really fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, and like all the side stuff that was going on, it felt important enough, right? So it
Hmm.
wasn't just like a passing thought. Like it all had purpose to it, and it was nice to see them like focus on their individual careers. And then we did have an ace character, which like it wasn't like a
Yes.
huge topic, but it was still kind of cool. Um,
Yeah, no, yeah, so they do like they spend some time like, talking about asexuality and then they also have um a like at the end of one episode they had like some like HPV awareness campaign thing they were doing where they're
yes.
like they just like integrated in the show like, hey, come get your HPV vaccine. Like even if you're a man, it's a super cool thing to do, you know? Like, yeah, you're so cool for like doing that for your partner kind of thing. So yeah, just like
Yeah.
a lot of little things. And then there's some discussion. It's a newer show, so there were like some discussions about how like because same-sex marriage is legalized now in Thailand, like
Ooh.
like now like I don't know, some celebration of that. And so yeah, it was really like I liked a lot of the kind of like more progressive like real world things that was integrated into the show. Yeah, I guess on to the main topic, which is my stand-in. We left off last week basically with Joe accepting Ming's offer to basically be the stand-in for him in exchange for like money and a house to take care of his mom and to like pay off their debt and their mom's like medical bills and stuff. So that's kind of where we left off last week.
Yeah. Mm. So the second half is my favorite half of the show. Um, so much
The second
happens.
half is so fun. I will say, I don't know. I really like the first half too.
Oh, I
I
did
would
too,
say the
but
first half is more stressful, and I liked that a lot. But this
yeah.
half is more like things start moving, and you're like rooting for things to happen, and it gets really exciting.
I think from the first half, the parts I like is before the accident. So like the first four
Mm,
episodes.
yeah,
So where you start to see like Joe and Ming's initial relationship.
yeah, yep,
But here is where like Joe is as new Joe and Ming and how things progress there.
yep. New relationship, but different body and different.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
This
so
is
complicated at this point.
this is a contract relationship too, so
Yeah. So, so Ming, because of their deal, Ming purchases a house, or he lets Joe and his mom move into a really new fancy house, that he's financing. And it's really nice. And they also have a housekeeper there to help to kind of take care of Joe's mom because she's having those medical issues and needs extra help. So yeah, they're beginning this half of the show with like a really nice start.
Yeah, that house is super nice.
It's so nice. Even like Joe's mom is just like, why, like we don't need all of this. Like why, like his mom's confused because she doesn't know anything about this like contract. So she's
Yeah.
just kind of like, We're having financial issues. Like, why do we move to such a nice house?" And then Joe's just like, "Oh, I'm like friends with the celebrity. He's like letting us stay here." That's kind of the explanation. And then I think she asked, she's like, "Oh, is it Tharn?" And
Yeah.
he's like, "No, I don't know who that is. It's not." But that's a little detail for later, I guess.
Yeah, that's our first sign that there's something we don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, good for them. I don't know. At least Joe's getting something out of this agreement. And then
Along with some trauma.
yeah, definitely some trauma. But he goes to Ming's house, and I mean their agreement is kind of to have sex, which
Yep.
is, I mean, it's like implied. So they
Hmm.
start to like hook up, but they stop because like he gets reminded about old Joe, and then he gets really sad, so they just like spoon in bed instead.
The way they
Uh,
started hooking up, where Joe was like pressed against the glass, like the
yeah.
window, I was like, can you like do that anywhere other than where everybody can watch?
I know. I like think about that all the time whenever like in Kin Porsche too, there's like a window scene and I'm just like,
I
do you
feel
guys
like
have
with
like can't you like see people?
I feel like with Kin Porsche that they were really high up that you'd have to be like
Mm.
looking for it, but like Ming's like apartment isn't that high up. Like it's
Yeah.
not that hard to see, especially when you have all the lights on.
Yeah, right. But
So,
yeah, at least it doesn't, I don't know, doesn't go anywhere. It's like sad and it's also kind of sweet that like Ming is like he's just like, "Oh my God, old Joe," and then he gets sad and cry or doesn't cry, but he gets really sad. But then it's also like,
he just wants
ugh.
to cuddle in bed at that point.
Yeah.
What's frustrating though is that Joe thinks he's still a stand-in for Tong and
Yeah.
not that he's being a stand-in for himself.
Yeah, he doesn't realize like why Ming is upset.
Yeah.
God, being a stand-in for yourself is so that's another form of needing therapy.
Yeah. I don't know how you even explain that to a therapist though.
I don't either. I'm trying to explain the show in general and it's very difficult. But in the morning, Joe makes Ming breakfast and then he's taking care of Ming. You can tell that like Joe cares about Ming, and like I know
Mhm.
he's contracted to, you know, give Ming company, but you can tell he cares, so he like makes him breakfast. And then he leaves for a music video shoot and Ming's like, "Oh, hurry back later." Like it's kind of like sweet, you know.
Mhm.
Ming's like, "Hurry back." And then at the music video shoot, he finds out that he is it's a music video for Soul and that he is supposed to play Soul's boyfriend, which K-pop's gotten real progressive here cuz maybe this is
It's a K-Will music
yeah,
video.
this is a K-Will music video. That's what makes most sense to me. But so they are like shooting the music video together. And then Soul is like monitoring the music video and he sees a shot that it's like Joe's back silhouette and it slightly resembles like the robber that broke into Joe's apartment that Soul caught. So he kind of puts two and two together there, but he doesn't say anything. Um and
I
then
love
like
that he
while
doesn't say anything.
yeah, I know. I love that like even the whole robbery too, they like don't call the police. They're just like, this is a bad look for us. We're not gonna call the police. We're just gonna like hire like a PI.
Mhm.
But Ming calls Joe during the shoot and he's upset that the music videos was Soul. He didn't know that. And like Sol takes the phone out of Joe's hand and like kind of taunts him. And Ming then orders Joe like he's like don't work with him again, and he kind of like leverages the house. Like he doesn't directly say it, but he's kind of just like he's just kind of like insinuating that like if Joe works with Soul again, he's going to like take away the house that he gave him and his mom. And
Yeah. Gotta love that, like, blackmail trauma, whatever.
I know it's so hard because this whole show Ming is being like really sweet, and then he's just being like nasty.
He's just very controlling and what he has for not being an only child, he has only child syndrome pretty strong.
He really does. I mean, I guess it makes sense that he's the youngest because I feel like youngest and only child syndrome kind of can look like each other, but
That makes sense. I just as an only child, I feel him.
yeah.
Maybe not to this level, I'm not this unhinged, but
Yeah,
I
right.
get it.
Yeah. He's just extremely possessive and jealous, I guess.
Mhm.
He's like, "What? You have other friends?" But and then now Joe is having a little crisis about how everything is the same. He's like, I'm
He
working
did
for the
this
same
though.
people. Yeah, I know, but I think what triggered this is the fact that Ming is once again jealous and angry that he's working with Soul, and he's just like, how the hell did this love triangle reestablish itself?
Right? Like I get why the crisis happened, but this is entirely his fault.
Yeah, but it's like he was so backed into a corner too. Like if he didn't need the money, I don't know if he would have like entertained Ming as much, you know? And like or I don't know if he would have like taken this music video.
I
Yeah.
just I wonder like what happened with the his modeling agency from like Dead Joe's like past life. If he
Yeah.
could have just gone that route instead. Because like this all started because he went to Woot's company.
That's true. Yeah, that I mean, that could have been a possibility, but we've also seen that new Joe is like not a good model. Like when that one photo shoot he did where he's just like flexing like a
Oh,
bodybuilder the whole time and they're just like what like this is like a jacket commercial. Like what are you doing?
stop smiling so much is what
Yeah.
they told him.
Yeah. So I
He-
don't know, maybe he wouldn't have made it in the model industry
yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. I mean it's very clearly this is like a fate thing, right? Because it was
Yeah.
already like Woot's like dad in the hospital bed next to his. But
Yeah.
but it's one of those it's like there were ways to avoid some of this.
Yeah. And somehow it's all the same.
Yep. Which I'm glad for.
Yeah. Well, him and well, speaking of the same, him and Wood go to a meeting, and at the meeting, so they're shooting Tong's new movie, and it's like kind of a remake, or it's like a sequel to the movie that he made that got him really famous. And they're trying to find shooting locations because they want to recreate the famous fight scene, but they can't get access to that location, so they're just like meeting on where to shoot. And Joe finds out here that he is needed to fill in for Tong during that important fight scene. And it's the fight scene that he originally filmed. Like Tong was never the one to do it. He was the one to do it. So he's like, okay, now I need to like reshoot the scene that I've already shot before that I got no credit for, but that's what made Tong famous. So once again, it's like super deja vu.
Do we know at this point that he did that scene originally without credit? Or does that come later?
They they hint at it
Okay.
here. Yeah. Um like they don't explicitly say so, but like rewatching it's like you can kind of pick up on the details, but um he Joe like when Joe finds out he needs to fill in for Tong for this specific scene, he has like a very like visceral reaction to it.
Valid.
So, yeah. But then Tong comes in, he announces he's like, "Hey, I asked the original filming location if they'll let us film there again, and they said yes." So, yay, that's all fixed.
Hey, Tong saves the day, I guess.
Yeah, thanks Tong. That's like the one thing he's done this whole show. And after the meeting, everyone like leaves the meeting room, and one of the guys who's in the meeting room, he approaches Joe, and he seems to recognize Joe. And of course, Joe is in, the new Joe's body, so like he recognizes the new Joe. And he says his name's Tharn, and that he's an old celebrity friend that Joe's mom had mentioned previously. So like this is the second time this first time we're meeting Tharn, but the second time we've like heard about him before.
Yeah, I I am not a fan. Just
No.
outright. Like
Mm,
immediately you already get like bad vibes.
oh yeah. And we kind of learn why because so Joe also kind of gets bad vibes and he goes home and he asks his mom, he's like, "Hey, was Tharn my ex-boyfriend?" And she was like, "Yes." Um, and the reason why, like, so we fought about, like, Joe and his mom fought about their relationship to the point where Joe ended up like jumping into the river or like committing suicide, which is the result of his side of the accident, which we didn't know up to this point how like this new Joe, his body ended up in like this situation. So first we're
Have you read
hearing
more
of
of the
that.
book?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I've been meaning to, but I just like it's so long.
So
Did
this
they talk more about it?
so I don't remember exactly what the accident was that caused the other Joe to die or whatever, but it was not suicide from this. Like this none of this happens.
Hmm.
This is all
Is
edited.
like Tharn a person in the book?
Not that I remember.
Okay.
Yes. No, that's a lie. Yes, he is.
Okay.
Um he is, but this whole like that's not I don't remember what caused the accident, but it wasn't this. The rest of Tharn's role in the show is the same. Oh.
Yeah. Because I would say the rest of Tharn's role in the show is pretty inconsequential, but his like Joe's mom's reasoning for why she does certain things like makes a lot of sense, like stemming from this incident.
Hmm.
Um, so that's like so after that, she like his mom is just like, okay, um, I will never tell you like what you can and can't do again. I'll accept and like love everything about you. But I don't want you to date Tharn, and it's not because he's a guy, but it's because he used you to get into the entertainment industry and then like abandoned Joe after that. So like, I love Joe's mom. She's so supportive.
Yeah, I was just about to say I we support a supportive mom.
Yeah,
Um,
she's kind
it's
of just like, oh, this guy fucking sucks, dude. But like, I even if you get back with him, I'll still love you.
yeah, it I will say she did have to come around because she was against Joe dating a guy in the beginning, and that's what
Hmm.
caused this. But
Yeah,
present day mom, we have gotten there.
yeah.
Um,
She's kind of. I mean, she's learned at this point that like nothing is worth losing her son over, and she
yep.
seems to have come a long way since then.
Hmm. So we love current mom.
Yeah, we do. But yeah, she so we get that little bit of information. Some old Joe lore. Or I guess new Joe old lore. My God. Okay, and then so he learns that, and then Ming calls him over again, and um he asks Joe what date his accident happened, and it's the same date. And Ming kind of confronts him about this. He's like, "Oh, well, that's the same day that my Joe had his accident." And like, of course, Joe doesn't confirm or deny anything because he's kind of just like, "Okay, I don't know." He was like, "I don't know. I was in a coma, so I don't know what date." Um, and then Ming is just like, "Oh, go. Can you go pack my bags for him? Because they're gonna go on that go on like a work trip to go film that one scene that we were talking about. And then while Joe is packing, he finds that like cheap watch that he bought for Ming for Christmas. Well, not cheap, but like, he finds the watch he bought for Ming for Christmas that like Ming was like, "Oh yeah, this isn't top of the line, whatever," but he still like kept it and like takes it with him. And so it's kind of a some evidence that Ming like does still care about Joe.
The signs are there.
Yeah. It's always the watch too. Like the watch is always kind of like the symbol of Ming still caring for him. Like when he does his like modeling jobs, it's always for like that watch, even though it's not the top of the line watch. It's like you can tell it's very sentimental to him.
Hmm. Yeah, he didn't like it too much when he walked in and or Joe is holding the watch.
Oh yeah, he like snatched it out of his hand.
Yeah, he was like, "You're done packing. I'll do the rest."
Yeah. And of course Joe is just standing there like,
What?
what? Like this is the same watch. But they go on their little work trip because they're gonna go shoot that scene and everyone is there. I don't know why like Ming is there, for example. I don't know if he's like investing in this movie. He might be.
He
Um
asked for a part in the movie.
oh, okay, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so he's in the movie now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so he's there, Tong of course is there, Joe of course is there, Tharn is also there. So, they're like in the hotel lobby like getting breakfast and Tharn approaches Joe and Joe ignores him. And Ming sees this and Ming and Tong are both like eating breakfast together and they kind of see this interaction. And then Tong approaches Tharn and he asks if him and Joe used to date. And then he said that he'll help Tharn win Joe over because he doesn't like having Joe hang around Ming. So it's getting messy.
Very messy.
Yeah. Uh, but separately, at the same time, Ming also confronts Joe, and for very different reasons. And Kia kind of asks like who Tharn is to him, and Joe's like, I literally don't remember him. And um, Ming was like, oh well, you should sleep with me tonight. And of course, Joe is like, no, this is like a work trip. Like, I'm not gonna do that. But Ming has his contract, so. But it's just it's funny. I mean, it's not funny, but how the difference between Tong and Ming, whereas like Tong is like scheming, like he's manipulating people and stuff, and then Ming is always just going just based off of like his own emotional like reactions to things and his own like I don't know.
Just jealousy. I swear, that's like his
Yeah,
number one emotion is just jealousy.
yeah, like Ming is never like trying to like really like he does everything for himself. He's not trying to like manipulate other people into he's just very like self-serving whereas Tong is just like evil mastermind.
Which I would say comes from they have different goals, right? So like
Mhm.
Ming comes from like insane money. So
Yeah.
like he doesn't need to worry about getting jobs and making money and being rich. He's already there.
Yeah.
So like all he wants right now is Joe to be his. Like this current Joe is his toy basically. Whereas Tong is after money in the
Yeah.
end.
Yep.
So so there's a lot more manipulation that has to happen.
And I feel like because of that I feel like it's just when it comes to like redemption era, it is easier to forgive Ming in a way because it's like, yeah, he's being like super selfish and like hurting people along the way, but at least he's not like going out of his way to try to like ruin people's lives, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, While I disagree with Ming's methods, I kind of get his logic, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Whereas Tong just
And
sucks.
yeah. Tong just sucks, and at least Ming has the excuse of like his loved one tragically died, even though he kind of had a role in that, you know. But
Yeah, he definitely was at fault there. Um,
yeah. But it's like Ming doesn't have ulterior motives other than this, which is like
and
something, I
there,
guess. I don't know.
yeah, and like I wouldn't even say this is an ulterior motive. He's made his motive pretty clear.
Yeah, right.
Like, like Joe might not realize that he's playing stand-in for himself, but he knows he's playing stand-in.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
We can appreciate the honesty at least.
yeah.
And when they're on set that day, Joe, he's kind of doing like the blocking for the shoot. Which is kind of when you go in and you just like stand on your marks and they just like test to make sure that the cameras are, you know, on the right angles and stuff. And he kind of corrects a staff member on where the camera should be because they're like, "Oh, your camera will be on like the right side." And he was like, "Oh, but the camera should be on the left side." And they're like, "Oh, how did you know that? Were you there on the original shoot day?" Because like he was correct. And of course he has to be like, "Oh, I don't know. I just like watched the movie a bunch of times and I guessed based on that."
Joe once again failing to not be Joe.
Yeah, right. And okay, so they do that. And then that night, okay, I love this whole part. I kind of love. So Tharn shows up in Joe's hotel room and Joe's like, "What are you doing here?" And Tharn's like, "Oh, we were assigned to be roommates." And then Tharn makes a move on Joe, of course, because remember, Tong told him, like, "Hey, get in the way of Joe and Ming." And then that's when Ming walks in. And then Ming is a jealous bitch and he drags Joe to his room. And Joe is very quick on this. He, like, figures out that someone set up Tharn to act this way. I don't know exactly how he knows this, but I guess he was just, like, thought it was weird. But and then
I
he
think
was
Joe was
like,
always suspicious of stuff like this.
yeah, it's just like he didn't really know Tharn's personality at all. So I'm like, oh, for all he knew, maybe this was like normal. But yeah, he catches on very quick. And he's kind of like, oh, well, who doesn't want me and Ming together? Oh, that would be Tong. So he kind of accuses Tong right away. And Ming's very angry at this, of course, and then Ming's just like very angrily like kissing him and stuff, and Tong knocks on the door and interrupts them. And this is what I love. This is what I wanted Joe to do the whole show is just like explode. You know, like like he Joe finally like storms back to his room and he's starts like for the first time in the show he is like screaming, he's yelling at Tharn to get out, and I'm cheering Joe because he deserves to have his like meltdown moment. Like this poor guy has been so calm until now, and it's kind of cathartic to see him at least like yell at some of these people that are just doing him a disservice. But
Yeah,
yeah,
scene
it's very
where
sad, you know, but I'm glad he's like not bottling up all of his emotions still.
yeah, the part where like he and Ming are like kissing on the couch or whatever, and Ming's like super angry, and Joe's like, "I'll be your dog, whatever," you know.
Yeah,
And I was like,
yeah.
oh, my heart, these emotions.
I know, and Joe, he's got like a tear running down his face too, and I'm like, bro. It's such a good scene, honestly.
It
Um,
is.
yeah, Poom like really knocks this part out of the park. So, yeah, I just remember watching this and just being like, it feels so good to see Joe finally yell at someone. Like if I was him, I'd be like yelling this whole show, you know?
Yeah, I think ever since he got into the new Joe's body, it's been so much of playing like defense that he hasn't
Mhm.
really been able to do anything. He's got to like go with the flow basically as things happen.
Yeah.
Um, because if he doesn't, then then
Everything's
y-
ruined.
yeah, and I think this is the first time that he was backed in a corner where he was like, I had nothing, like I wasn't doing anything. This was not me.
No, I mean within the span of like 10 minutes, he had like Tharn coming at him and then Ming coming at him and then Tong coming at him pretty much and it's just like too
A
much.
lot, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm like finally Joe is like standing up for himself like slightly. And it's less standing up for himself as it is just like him having a breakdown, but
Yeah.
yeah, we will at least in the future see a little bit more of him standing up for himself, which is great because
Mhm.
Joe's really been through the most.
He has.
Yeah. And the next morning, Ming, he's trying to be like more cautious and like soft around Joe. Like you can tell, like this is at like breakfast. You can tell Ming feels kind of bad and like about everything that happened, and so he's treading lightly and trying to be nice to Joe, but Joe just like isn't having it. And fair enough, dude.
I love that Ming is like trying to be gentle.
Yeah.
I, I love that. Like, hello, we see the green flag mixed in with the red there. Um,
Yeah. And I love like whenever Ming tries to be gentle, it's just like he's just so like stoic about it too, but you can like see it in his eyes so that he is like
mhm.
trying and stuff. But
Yeah, because a lot of it is he doesn't really know how to be like nicer.
no. Okay, now it's time for Joe to shoot the important fight scene. And while they're setting up for this, Ming overhears the crew talk about like the original scene from the original movie and um something that they said makes Ming suspicious and he's like, "Hey, is Tong the one who shot the scene in the original movie?" And the crew like they basically say no. Like they don't come out and just say no, but they're just like, "Well, they kind of confirm."
Mhm.
And then we see that this is so important to Ming because this is the scene where that like Ming watched the scene and this is why he's in love with Tong because he watched him do perform the scene and all those years ago that's what really like got him infatuated with Tong, but now he's realizing that like Ming was never in love with Tong in the first place because the person who originally performed that scene was old Joe. So Ming was never in love with Tong. In love with Tong, he was always in love with old Joe.
That would mess me up so much.
Yeah, and it does mess Ming up because like while they're shooting the scene, Ming starts sobbing, walks onto set, and is just like hugging Joe's back, you know? And I'm sure everyone's like, what the fuck? Like, they're probably like, I've like never seen this dude like express any emotion before, and now he's like breaking down, sobbing, and just like hugging the stunt performer.
As far as Ming is aware, the Joey is hugging is still not the right Joe anyway.
Yeah, right. He's just like it's always the back.
Yeah,
Bro, we're at like the fourth back now because we had, or maybe this is the third.
that's the third, but still, that's
Yeah,
three's a lot.
yeah. That's so many backs to be in love with. Ming is just really into backs, I guess.
Yeah, which is I don't think a body part I've ever really considered too much.
Like I'm a fan of a back, but I'm not like gonna obsess over someone for like the next 4 years because of it.
No.
But I guess I don't know. Maybe we just haven't seen a good enough back.
And I mean, Ming has not Ming. Joe has a pretty good back. I'm not gonna lie,
He
but
does.
I
He
don't know.
justifies everything. But yeah, so that happens and that's very out of character and um On the way back from the shoot, Ming forces Joe to ride in the car with him, and he takes Joe back to his house, and then he goes in and meets Joe's mom, and they're chatting, and Joe's mom says that like, oh, that Joe's been much better behaved like since the accident, like he's a different person. And Ming is just like, oh, this is just not a coincidence, is it? Like the accident's on the same day, like Joe seems like a different person since the accident, the back's the same, like yeah.
Mm.
All signs are pointing to something weird happening.
Yeah, I'm glad at least one person in the show is smart enough to like piece all this together.
Right. I know that's like I do feel like Ming is kind of the first one to figure this out.
Hmm.
It's all, the people that Joe is like closest to, but at least it does prove that like Ming knew Joe well enough to like figure, to know the
Yeah,
difference.
yeah, definitely agree.
Mhm.
I just the fact that like Ming like clocked him in the elevator and like the first time they met anyway,
Mhm.
like was like that's my person. He just didn't quite realize that that's what happened, but
Yeah. He caught a vibe for sure. And Soul gets some CCTV footage of the night that Joe's house is broken into. And they find a guy on the tapes that looks suspicious. And Soul does recognize him as the thief, and he also recognizes him as New Joe, but he kind of covers for him and says that he like doesn't recognize him at all. So,
which is such a weird thing to do.
I know it's
I don't entirely understand.
I wonder kind of if like Soul at this point is putting together New Joe and Old Joe or something, because he's like, I don't want to report him to the police because
Yeah, I
I
mean,
feel like he thinks maybe something's going on here too.
yeah, I mean, I think he thinks there's something going on, and like he did say at some point that Joe reminded him of old Joe, but I don't outside of like that one comment and the fact that like Soul got like really clingy to Joe really quick, like
Hmm.
I don't know that there's really been clear signs for him, not the same way that there's been for like Wit and Ming,
Yeah.
like from what we've seen, both of those, like he's like slipped up in front of them enough to be like, oh yeah, that's something only old Joe would know or only he would do. And it's with Soul, it's just vibes.
Yeah, it's purely vibes and just like, I don't know, gut feeling, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Other than maybe the fact that he was the one that witnessed the break-in,
Yeah.
and he I don't know, maybe he's suspicious, like why would New Joe break into old Joe's house and just take like an ID or something,
Yeah,
and
I mean
maybe
it
he's
is
thought about it that
suspicious,
way.
but
Yeah. But anyway, Ming is he goes to see he's like, I don't know if he's like a shaman or he's just some like magical man in the mountains. And this character is never explained. Let me
nope.
put it. This is the weirdest part of this show. It like makes literally no sense, but it has something to do with like, you know, Buddhist religion, but Ming just has this magic man he goes sees, and that's about it for that for now. But he'll come back later. And back to Joe's mom, she's doing well. She's getting good health care thanks to Ming and his money. And at the hospital, Wood stops by and he asks Joe about his relationship with Ming. And Joe says that they're lovers, and Wood is just like, why would you do that?
Would also ask my friend that if they if they did that.
I don't
Especially
know.
like what like
Mhm.
warned him pretty early on too of
Yeah.
like don't go near this guy.
Dude, from day one. So that's why I was like dying laughing when I watched this scene. And Joe's just like, yeah, we're involved, and was just like, why would you do that? Honestly, he's a homie. He's trying his best, you know. And Joe's response is that it's for money. Um, and so what kind of starts grilling him about all the coincidences between him and old Joe, and like how he knew things that only old Joe knew. And Joe kind of, plays it off, excuses himself, and then what, of course, just like thinks he's like losing his mind, which is like so fair.
Though, right? Like,
Yeah. Like this, I guess this is kind of when the three of Joe's closest friends, you know, start figuring it out, but all of them are also just like, this is like fucking insane. Like, why am I accusing this poor guy of these crazy things, you know?
right? I could not imagine like if I had a friend that passed away and then I met somebody who had like the same name as them and like mannerisms, like I could not imagine having to process that in any way that makes sense.
I know, and like, and just not, and just like having to like, not wanting to accuse them of being the same person, but just being like, the coincidences are overwhelming, but how is that even possible, you know?
Mhm.
And then we go back to Seoul, and he's doing like a full dance practice. Like there's like a whole scene where he's just doing a dance practice. I'm like, oh, okay. Because he's a K-pop star, right? And what shows up, and he's like, um, he's just like, oh, you actually recognized the thief, didn't you? Like, it's New Joe, right? And so they agree on that. Um, so they, at least they can be suspicious together, so they don't both feel like they're losing their minds. Joe's cooking for Ming again, and he makes ramen, and he cracks the egg into the ramen like the exact same way that old Joe used to. And Ming gets like total deja vu from this. Because it's just like, once again, the coincidences are stacking up. And if I was in like Ming or Wood's position, I might actually lose my mind. Like, trying to deal with this.
The way that Joe just sucks at not being Joe is
I
unreal.
I know he can't like act like another person to save his life. Literally.
Like the one thing he needs to do is just not be himself, and that is the only thing he knows how to do.
Mm-hmm. Which like, I mean, Joe is such a nice person, and he's very outgoing and caring and stuff. So he's like a good person to be, but like,
Maybe not in
yeah.
this exact moment.
No, you gotta like change things up a bit if you want to stay undercover, you know?
Mhm.
So they take a bath, and Ming just like flat out asks Joe, he's like, are you Joe? Like old Joe. And Joe gets really defensive. He's like, he was just like, would you, like, if I was Joe, would you even believe me? Like, that's impossible. Joe's dead. And Ming gets really mad at this because, of course, he doesn't like people insinuating that Joe's dead. And so he kicks him out.
That was so messy, like, that whole scene, like, first it's like, what are if it was old Joe, there's a reason he's not telling you.
Yeah.
So he's not gonna just outright admit it. Like, you're gonna have to catch him, right?
Yeah.
And then at the same time, like, if it isn't old Joe, that is such a weird thing. Like, that would be another way history would repeat itself, right? Of oh, like the Joe finding out he's a stand-in for somebody who's dead, right? Isn't that much different than Joe finding out he's stand-in for Tong. Um,
Hmm.
that would just make him mad too, and they would like that would screw things over again. Um,
Yeah. And I mean, at this point, that I don't think Joe knows that he's a stand-in for himself yet. Like, I still think he
no.
thinks he's a stand-in for Tong. So, yeah, he gets like when Ming accuses him of this, like Joe gets mad off the bat, and then of course Ming gets even more mad, kicks him out, which it's also funny because like Ming kind of knows that Joe is Joe, but then you can see it kind of switches and then he's just like, no, that's insane, like this is a different person, and then he's like always mean to new Joe.
A lot to wrap your head around. So
Yeah, I mean Ming's constantly on a roller coaster of like, this person is my loved one and this person is not my loved one, like, and they're like impersonating him kind of, and
oh god, that would be even worse if it was like somebody who like knew old Joe well enough to like become him.
oh god.
Oh, that would have made for a much different show.
That would have, yeah, that would have been like a horror, like horror genre.
I'd watch that too though. Um
Honestly, same. I mean, it's kind of like Parasite-esque.
been a minute since I thought of that movie.
Yeah, I love that movie. But just kind
Mhm.
of the idea of like taking over the role of the last person before you, but you were the one who, maybe old Joe killed new Joe, or new Joe killed old Joe. I don't know.
That would be an interesting this
Yeah,
the
I'm
alternate
lost.
reality my stand-in.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, we never ever get any sort of explanation about how the body switch occurred. And so that's like one thing where I would like to, I you know what? I respect them for not addressing it at all.
Read the book.
Oh shit. Okay. Got you. I'll do that.
It's it's maybe not like clearly like 100% spelled out type of a thing, but
Mhm.
it's addressed I'd say a little bit more than it is here.
Okay.
So,
Because I kind of do respect not addressing it all over addressing it and then the explanation being like really weak or something, you know?
yeah, I wouldn't say that it's weak in the novel. It just kind of goes in, I think, a little more on like the religion side
Okay.
of kind of explaining it in a way. It,
Okay.
it I was at least I don't remember the exact details, but I remember being at least like satisfied enough of going, okay, so that's fine. I'll allow it.
Does the shaman make more sense then?
Um, yes and no, I guess.
Okay.
Because like the shaman doesn't have anything to do with the body switch, right?
Okay.
So that's not the explanation behind it. Um, it's more of like the shaman is just there.
Yeah,
Because it's
once again.
the shaman is like Mike's shaman, really.
Yeah.
It's not Ming's shaman, it's his older brother's, but
At this point, Joe, he goes to his parents' graves. Like, okay. Um, and Woot and Soul catch him there. And this is like the confirmation that they needed that Joe is their old friend Joe. And
mhm.
right off the bat, Woot is just mad that Joe took that sketchy job like that he died from, and that he didn't tell him that he was back sooner. But they like hug, and you know, and like finally Joe has some like confidants that he can talk to, for the first time.
Yeah. I Wood's reaction is so valid. Because
And
doesn't he like just straight up just punch him?
yeah, like I think he kind of like pushes him and he's like, I told you if you took that job we wouldn't be bros anymore. And then he like hugs him right after. Yeah, fortunately now at least the three of them can, are in on what's happening and can talk about it together. Cause man, if I was like Joe, I don't think I could have gone that long without telling anyone.
Yeah, I think the moment I had like slipped up like with the twins thing
Mm-hmm.
when Joe was at Wood's house, I think I'd have like told him there. I don't know.
Yeah.
I I like I kind of get why he didn't, right? Because he was still very much having to keep everything close because he didn't know how to handle anything and he had a million different problems all at once.
Mm-hmm.
Um but
And I don't know if he was like afraid that would be mad at him still or something. If maybe
yeah,
that played
I
into it.
I I definitely I think I would be.
Yeah.
Because their friendship did not end on good terms.
Mhm.
Um, I'll say I feel like the way Wood talks about old Joe has made it kind of clear at this point that like he's not holding anything against him and he just misses his friend. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah, so they, it's cute to see at least like Joe have a support system again.
thank God he needed it.
He really did. He might have gotten to some dark places if he was left on his own. So,
Hmm.
but and then Joe also mentions that he has hopes that his body is just like in a coma somewhere because they're talking about like how Joe's in this new body and they're like, well, what about your old body? It was never found. And Joe's just like, oh, a part of me still thinks it's like it's out there and then maybe like the Joe the Joe's soul of the body that I'm in right now, maybe like our souls got switched or something. Which are valid questions because these are all questions I had while watching the show.
The possibility of being able to switch bodies again, like that maybe that's up in the air, I think is the only thing that would have kept me going at this point.
I know. I genuinely, like, when I was watching this, I thought that's what was gonna happen, maybe.
I did too.
Yeah.
Not that it
Because,
ever really hints at anything one way or another. It just,
mhm.
I was like, that seems like the only real happy ending.
Yeah, I know. That's exactly what I was thinking too. So, Joe, or no, Ming at this time, he goes to see his shaman again and he, like, learns how to meditate. And I guess he's supposed to find the answer if Joe is Joe, I guess. I don't know. I
Hmm.
didn't really understand this part, but I'm glad it worked out for Ming, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't fully understand this one either, I don't think, because it was to figure out because I it was the shaman had still been saying that me or Joe isn't dead or alive or whatever, and that Ming would have to be able to see what's in front of him basically, and that's where I think
Mhm.
the meditation thing comes in, which he spends like days sitting on a tree branch, right? Like
I
he's there
think
for a while,
yeah, I think so. And I guess I don't know, gives him the answer that he was looking for?
which not really because he still doesn't know who Joe is.
Yeah, I know. I'm like that's why I'm like confused on what the point of this was. But because previously the shaman had told him that like Joe is not dead, but he's not alive.
Hmm.
So I don't know like where this meditation got him, but yeah.
Maybe it was to settle him because he needed to be able to like see what's in front of him or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yeah, I don't know either. Um, but then, so from their little Kiki, Soul takes Joe home, and Soul meets Joe's mom, and they like hug and they like chat, and it's cute, and Joe's mom likes him, which I think she thinks too that because Soul is a celebrity, I think she might think that this is where the house came from Soul.
Hmm.
I don't remember exactly, but.
I love that she's just getting to meet all these celebrities and she's just rolling with it.
I know, no, she's having the best time meeting all these celebrities. Like she's truly vibing and I love that for her.
Hmm.
And then Mike, who is Ming's older brother, he calls Joe over and he's like, "Why is Ming spending so much money on you?" And then Ming shows up and then they leave. Like, okay.
Protective older brother popping in for a moment.
Yeah, right. Just for like a second. And then Ming and Joe, they go to Joe's old apartment and um the first time they met, they like kiss at the top of the stairs, like outside the door, and this happens again. Yeah, and you can tell it's a lot of like old feelings coming back and um they do actually have sex this time. And Oh God, this is one of the weirdest plot points of a show I've ever seen. But remember how Joe sneezes when he has an orgasm? Well, new Joe does the same damn thing. So, yeah, so Ming pretty much now has confirmation that Joe is Joe because of the sneezing thing. And Joe is just confused because he's not sure if his feelings for Ming, if they're new or if they're old or like what he knows he's into Ming and he has feelings for him, but he just like can't work it out. Um but he doesn't have time to process because Ming gets a call and they're like, "Hey, we found Joe's body." And then the episode ends there.
Because we have Ming now knows that
Mhm.
Joe is Joe, which still doesn't outright. There's not a whole lot of clarity with that. But now we also have the body, which kind of negates that Joe is Joe, right?
Yeah, I think it does make Ming a little bit more confused, you know?
Yeah, because now we have a whole different level of trauma because now we have to process some grief.
Yeah,
Um,
right. Oh my God, imagine having to mourn your own body.
yeah, there's nothing about any part of this scenario that I want to partake in.
No.
Like
So, yeah, horrible.
if something happens to me, I do not want to pop up in somebody else's body. I don't want to have to witness my own funeral. Um,
If you had to be a character in the show, who would you be?
Ming.
Okay. Oh God. I feel like I'd want to be like Woot or something. Like someone who's just like less affected by everything.
No, please let me be the red flag. It's fine. I'm
Yeah.
halfway there, I'm sure. Um,
Yeah, I mean the stuff is like so complicated, I feel. Like it's very morally ambiguous, especially
yeah,
now cuz it's just like I mean, this is just like uncharted territory. Like no one else has ever had to deal with something like this before, you know?
yeah. I mean, I feel like realistically, it's pretty clear cut that Ming is just, at least up until this point, a pretty strong red flag.
Yeah.
But that's okay. He's attractive, so it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, we can look the other way for that. And would Joe and Soul go to where the body has been recovered and they have to like wait in a separate room because like they're doing DNA tests on the body and they only let Ming in. I guess Ming is I considered his like next of kin or something. I don't know. Cause like
So this scene
yeah.
plays out a lot different in the book,
Okay.
like a lot different. Um,
What's like different?
so first, it's there was like a earthquake or something, and that's how they find the body. Um, it like uncovers it from wherever it was at, and it was while I want to say it was while they were like on location.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, because I want
That's
to
like
say like
extra traumatic.
yeah, because like Joe goes missing again for a little bit. I think I want
Okay.
to say. But then when they go to do like the testing, Ming like pulls up with the military.
What?
So that's where like the whole ending of the show is totally different. Um, do you care if I spoil a lot of this for you?
I don't care. I will
Okay.
read it, but it'll take me
Yeah.
so long. It's like whatever.
Okay, so and this is why I always say that like it's a cultural difference on how like the ending plays out because I don't know enough about Thailand to be able to say that this could even happen in Thailand, but like um Ming's grandfather is like a high-ranking military official in the book.
Oh, okay.
So like they live on like a military base. Like it is some hardcore stuff. And so
Mhm.
that's where Ming's power really comes from. It's not so much the money. Like he still has a ton of money, but it's also he's got strings into like high-ranking military stuff.
I see.
So so when they find like the body, he pulls up with the military and is like, "We're taking the body and we're gonna go do our own testing or whatever. You guys can all buzz off." And like nobody nobody really gets in, and I forget how Joe even gets it because Joe has to like sneak in. Like
Uh-huh.
like no one knows that Joe like makes it in. Like he like sneaks in, um, like sees the body and like jets back out basically, which is sort of how it plays out, but like it's not quite the same. But yeah. So like there's a lot that happens with the military and the rest of the
Yeah. Yeah, because
um
there's zero military in the
yeah.
show.
And that's what I'm saying. Like I don't like obviously Thailand's gonna have a military, right? They have the mandatory service thing. But I don't know that it's quite as common like culturally for that to be like a thing where people pull a lot of strings constantly.
Mhm.
Whereas I feel
Yeah.
like you see that a lot more in like Chinese dramas.
Yeah.
So whether like I don't know real life how it is, but I feel like that's just a more normal thing to see in a Chinese drama than in like anything from Thailand. Like
Yeah. That makes sense then.
like the closest I think we've seen in anything I've watched has either been like the sign is really like military based and there's some corruption, but that's like everybody's like in the police force. And then there's um and, like only friends where they pay off the cops, right?
Mhm.
Like that's
Yeah.
the only thing I can think of, but that's apples and oranges to what's happening.
Yeah, right.
So, but that's in the book. That's why no one else can get near the body is because Ming has just decided nobody else is allowed near it, and he has made the military make that very clear.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess in the show, I don't know. I don't know if it's because they're like living together and they were, I guess they considered partners or something, but
Yeah,
yeah. Ming is the only one in the room, and then while they're waiting for the DNA test results, what says that like since the accident, I guess this is kind of an explanation, but his all of Joe's like distant relatives that he didn't really know wanted all of his stuff, but so Ming, instead of like letting that happen, he took care of him stuff for him. So I don't know if Ming like kind of declared them in like a domestic partnership or something, but he was able to like, you know,
he paid them off.
over. Yeah. Okay.
But
Yeah.
and that's what it was in the book. He paid them off.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So he was able to like take care of Joe's stuff. And then in the middle of the night, like Joe can't wait anymore, so he bursts into the room with the body, and it's so sad. And he's sitting on the floor, and the clipboard with the results is kind of next to him, and he doesn't even look up. And Joe just takes a look at the clipboard, and they just kind of sit in silence. It's really sad.
Yeah, Ming is like catatonic. He is
Yeah.
not present at all.
No, and it's just so weird to like have confirmation that your boyfriend's dead, but also he's right here, and also he's learning that his old body's dead. And I'm like, what do you
Yeah, I
do?
I think at this point it is long forgotten for Ming that he thinks that Joe is Joe.
Yeah,
Um, because how do you hold up that argument when you also have Joe's body sitting in front of you?
yeah. And I mean, at this point too, he's not even thinking like he's not thinking at all. It's just pure emotion, you know.
Yeah.
He's not
So,
thinking yet, but
no.
well, okay. So the next day, then they have Ming organizes the funeral, and it's just the next day, like wherever they are. And um he Ming puts like a cute Polaroid of the two of them on like the altar, and he just kind of sits and thinks of all the good times, and then he starts to think about all the like mistakes he made and like all the things he regrets, and he's like crying on the floor. And then What and Soul come and pay their respects, and they don't talk to Ming, but they sit in the back, and they're the only three people in the building. and and Joe wasn't supposed to come because it would, make things obvious. But he comes to his own funeral anyway. And
Just traumatic on its own.
yeah, right. And all of them are silent, and they don't speak, and they leave at some point, and Ming stays till the very, very end. it's a very beautiful scene. It's like it's extremely sad and no one speaks at all, but they are able to say a lot just like, with their acting and stuff.
Yeah, Joe like stands outside of the room for like a long time, doesn't he? Just
Yeah.
stares.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I don't know like anything about Thai funerals. Um, and I've seen a few different ones in different shows now, and it's never been the same process ever.
Mhm.
Because like Moonlight Chicken, the funeral in that scene is very different from how this one goes.
Right.
Um, but it was really interesting to see just on a like on a cultural understanding level.
Yeah. And I mean this funeral too is like they just have it very quickly and they don't really like none of like Joe's family or anyone comes and stuff, because they're just like, oh, he's been gone for 2 years and whatever. We'll just like put him to rest now. So it's like it's definitely very, I don't know. It's very like empty, you know.
Hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, I don't it's so heartbreaking, but Joe after the funeral his body is cremated and Ming is crying and Joe sees him crying and he gets he's mad.
He
He's just
loses
like
it.
yeah, he's like anguished, you know? He pushes him, he's sobbing and he's like, "Why are you crying now? Like why now are you crying? Like it's too late. Why are you crying?" Um and yeah, this is like the second part in the show where I'm just like so happy that Joe loses it and finally like asserts himself, you know?
Yeah, this was another good acting scene from Poom.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
like just a very standout one because it was a lot of raw emotion
Mhm.
all at once, and like Ming is just standing there taking it for the most part.
Yeah.
Um, and because Ming is distraught,
Mhm.
and then Joe is like having to deal with the fact that like he blames Ming, of course, right, for everything, but then also like that body was like his last hope of going back to his old life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, it sealed the deal now, you know?
Yeah, which is tough.
Mm-hmm. And like what and Soul kind of pull him off of Ming, because I mean at this point, they don't know that Ming knows that Joe is Joe, because like Joe doesn't realize he does the sneezing thing, I guess. So
Okay, Joe.
yeah. So they're just like you're being like too suspicious. Like could you imagine like thinking about it and like not knowing Joe is Joe and then Joe's doing all this. He didn't even know the guy that died.
Yeah, that would be so weird.
Yeah, it would be so out of pocket like without context. And then after they like calm down a little bit, oof, okay, Ming walks up to them and he's composed himself and he said that he's nasty. He says that all of Joe's belongings and ashes belong to him now, and he's gonna burn all his stuff. And when I was watching this, I was like, bitch, what? Like, what are you doing? Like, that's so rude.
I
But then
was
it makes sense later, but
Yeah, to me that was such a trauma response before realizing what it would actually was. I was
uh-huh.
like this is like it felt like a trauma response to me of like okay, like I just burn everything because I can't handle it anymore, right?
Yeah. But
Um
he was doing it to like he went he was doing it to like get a rise out of them. Like when you could
yeah,
tell when he was saying it, he was like purposely being a huge bitch about it
yeah,
and
which
like
I still
trying to
think is
make them mad.
trauma.
Yeah.
Like it's still trauma. Um,
Yeah. But we also learn so when Joe okay, so because of this, Joe once again breaks into his old apartment to get his stuff to save it before it's burnt. And Soul comes to help him, and Joe's like, just like, don't try to stop me. And Soul's like, I'm not trying to stop you. I'm here to keep watch.
Thank you, Soul.
Yeah. And so they do this, but it is a trap. Ming is there and he did all of this just to bait Joe into coming and exposing who he really was. Um which is honestly so smart, you know.
It it was. I was so surprised.
Mhm.
Um, I was like, "Oh, right," because like Ming is really smart in this. You just like there's not any like moments where like or not many where it's like necessary for him to like make a point of it, I
Yeah.
guess.
Mhm.
So when it does happen, it's like, "Oh, right. That's a
Yeah.
thing."
And now I'm like a little less mad at him because I was like previously it was like, wow, that's so mean to just like burn everything. But I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I see your scheme and I support it. And they're like talking and they have like a little romantic moment, but then Soul comes in and he just like decks Ming. Like
Soul always getting in the way.
he is. I do. Okay, so in the book, for as far as I am, Soul is so annoying and like
Yes.
Joe doesn't even really like him at all. But at least in the show, Soul does come across as like a caring friend. And he
Mhm.
does kind of come across like maybe he does a lot of this because he hopes to get more. But at the very least, I thank him for being there to like support Joe. But I do get
Yeah.
annoyed because he's just constantly like cock blocking.
Yeah, I they definitely push more that it's for ulterior motives in the book,
Hmm.
whereas they don't push that quite as much here. So,
Yeah. I mean, the last thing Joe needs is like someone to manipulate him.
yeah, Ming's gonna do a good enough job of that at
Yeah.
any given moment.
Yeah. And so the next day, Joe he gets up for the press conference for the music video that he shot with Soul. And Soul's giving him the special treatment and he like holds his hand in the way in. Oh my god, this is so extra. And then Ming, oh my god, he shows up and like interrupts the press conference with a massive bouquet of flowers and just gives it to Joe in front of everyone.
This is such a Ming move.
It is. It's so over the top. And um everyone like at the press conference and stuff, they're just like, "Oh my god, is this like a hint to part 2 of the music video?" Like they think it's like some love triangle subplot and
No, it's a real love triangle.
yeah. And there's an after party and um Joe's at the bar, Ming comes up to him and he's like, you want to like stay with me? And Soul shows up and of course he starts a fight and oh my god, this love triangle. But there's press there, so it's kind of played off as like once again a part of like the music video script, which is so whatever. And Joe is then pressured by higher ups in the company to leave with Ming, like the leave the party, which is what Ming wanted. And he he gets in the car, but then he gets angry at Ming because he's constantly just being manipulated and dragged around all the time. And so he yells at Ming to leave him alone, and then he gets out of the car and like starts walking away. And then Ming actually chases after him. So,
I love Ming.
yeah, I just love seeing moments where Ming is actually like vulnerable and
Mhm.
shows that he cares, you know?
Yeah.
It
Because
just
deep down,
helps.
honestly, he's really soft. Like,
Yeah.
he's just exterior, he's kind of an asshole to everybody, but, like, when you get past that, he's really soft and vulnerable and kind of weak in a way.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. I mean, he does everything he like does in the show is basically because he is just like pathetically in love with someone.
yeah.
And I do to a point I like do I like feel it, you know.
Mhm.
Like there are worse motivations in the world.
Yeah, I mean, you could be Tong.
Yeah, you could be Tong, and I hate that man.
Yep. As much as I love Mech, I hate Tong.
I know,
It's a struggle.
dude. He does such a good job of playing just like a character who I just despise.
Hmm.
Um,
I'm glad that I found his like Twitter and that he's super active, so I could like
yeah,
separate him from Tong really easily
I
because it
know.
was so I don't have that struggle like what I had with Neo where it took me like another 3 shows to get over it.
I know. Yeah, that way, like next time we watch a show that he's in, we can be like, "Oh, that's Mac," and not like, "Oh, God damn it, Tong." But yeah. So Ming chases after Joe, and he, finally explains that he fell. The reason why he was in love with Tong was because he saw his back in that one action scene, and then he was like, "But I realized that it was actually your back all along," and kind of explains that, like, it's always been you. And Joe starts to walk away, and Ming, he cries, and he's like, well, you still have half a year left of your contract. I'm gonna make you love me in that time. Which, it is like, it's so grimy to, like, be like, hey, you won't love me, you won't give me a chance, so I'm gonna, like, force you to give me a chance. But it's such, like, a Ming thing to do, you know?
It's necessary evil at this moment.
Yeah. Like, this
I
is,
will
like, his,
say,
like, last resort.
yeah. I will say falling in love with somebody for their back and then being like this hard like up and like pressed about how much they love them and how easily he is swayed after that.
Oh my god. Dude, yeah, Ming's I honestly I just really love characters who are, like, really obsessive.
I do
And I
too.
th- and I think that's why I like Ming a lot despite all of his wrongs, and he does a lot of wrongs.
He does.
Yeah. But
But
then like after that, they go back to their apartment, and Ming, he's taking care of Joe, he's cooking for Joe. They have some, like, heart to heart conversations, and I'm just like, okay, this is where the Ming redemption arc starts. And, like, Joe's like, "Oh, did you truly?" So Joe at this point, he's kind of dropped the whole facade thing because he's realized that Ming's, caught him. But he's like, "Did you truly love me, or were you just lonely?" And Ming is just like, "Every day without you was agony, and I couldn't stop thinking about, like, all the bad things I did to you and how I wish I could take it back." And then they just cuddle, and it's, like, cute. And then I'm just like, okay. Like, I see the potential for, this relationship to happen again.
I was so committed.
Mhm.
I think before the accident even happened, I was like, no, this is my it couple for the year.
I know, me too. After I realized that, because for the long while, I thought that Meng was the one that literally caused the accident that killed Joe. So, once I realized that that wasn't true, I was like, okay, I'm, like, behind this. And then, so the next morning, um, Ming's phone is ringing, and Joe's in bed, and he grabs Ming's phone, and it's Tong calling. And Ming, or Joe just answers the phone. He's like, I don't remember what he says, but then Tong's just like, put Ming on the. He's like, who is this? Put Ming on the phone. And Joe's just like, don't tell me what to do. I'm not your servant, and just, like, hangs
Yeah.
up on him.
So here for it.
Yeah, I love just the increasing amount that Joe is, like, standing up for himself.
Mhm.
And Ming is making breakfast, and Joe tells Ming, he's like, hey, Tong called to ask for money. And then that's how we learn, like, apparently Tong is in a lot of debt because since Ming's family is conservative, he can't get the money from Ming's sister because she doesn't have access. And Ming's just like he might not have married her anyway if he knew that. But Ming thinks it's funny that Joe hung up on Tong because he's just like, haha, old you would never have done that. So
Joe has
it's
grown a
nice.
backbone.
Yeah, Joe's grown a backbone, and it's nice to see Ming side with Joe on something over Tong.
Mhm. Which is a good sign that he really is over Tong and it is all about Joe.
Yeah. Yeah, because once Ming told Joe about like the back thing, that's when Joe realized that he wasn't a stand-in for Tong anymore. And so I think ever since Joe realizes he's not a stand-in, he's been able to like open his heart a bit more to, giving Ming a second shot.
Which is so valid.
Yeah, I know, right? Like that's you just like can't continue a relationship like that. But if you're being a stand-in for yourself and then you're actually yourself, I guess that changes things.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, he goes to work later and then he comes home from work and he learns that his mom didn't go to the hospital for treatment like she normally does. And so he quickly runs home and he's afraid something happened to his mom, but his mom's at home and then Ming is there with her and Ming is just like, "Oh, like I took her to a better hospital."
I love one how domestic Ming gets immediately with like
Yeah.
cooking breakfast and whatever and taking care of Joe. But then
hmm
two, how he also just immediately adopts Joe's mom.
Yeah, he's like, I need to win the mom over. Like, this is very important. And of course, Joe's mom loves it because she gets to meet more celebrities. And then that night, speaking about domestic and clingy, Ming is outside Joe's bedroom window, and he's just like, "Hey, like, look aside, let me in." And Joe's like, "No, this is my mom's house. She's here. I'm not gonna let you in." And Ming's just like, "Hurry, the dogs are barking. They're gonna eat me." And then Joe's like, "Okay, come in." And so he like lets him crawl in through the window. And then they sleep together. Um and then but this time when they have sex, it's still I don't know why. Okay, I noted this. I feel like this is like, meaningful, but they still do it from like the back this time, but this time like Joe's like angled so that like they see each other's faces the whole time, which is like the first time they've ever done that while hooking up. So,
Definitely, definitely important.
yeah, all the symbolism in their like the ways they have sex and stuff, sometimes I'm just like, "Oh my God." Like the sneezing. But it is important, so I'm like I have to put it in the notes. And then this is the funniest scene in the whole show. But in the morning, Joe's mom comes in and she's like knocking on the door and Joe is like busy trying to stuff Ming into like the curtain. He's like trying to hide Ming, doing a horrible job. And his mom comes in and she's like, just come out already. Like, I know you're both in there. And Ming is just like standing there, like in a blanket, and he just like turns around and he's like, "Hi."
Cutest scene, and I love that they made like figurines out of this scene.
Mhm. I know, it's so cute. I'm like, would love one, but I'm sure the shipping is crazy.
Yeah, shipping from Thailand is insane.
I know. I'm sure one of these days there will be some merch or something that I'll really, really want, and then I'll have to do it, but until then, I've been staying strong.
That makes one of us.
Yeah.
They've they've started shipping the first round of orders from Noel from his Magenta merch.
hmm
So my
Did you?
stuff hasn't come in yet, so they haven't
Okay.
shipped it yet.
Got you. Hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Been a while.
It has, because it was supposed to ship in August, and then sometime in August they said there was a manufacturing delay. So then
Mm,
it was like sometime in September, and I'm just like, okay,
yeah.
as long as it's before October, that would be great because I'm traveling a lot in October. The merch for my stand-in though is excellent.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, this is like the cutest scene, so it's really funny.
Hmm.
But yeah, then they all have like breakfast together. And uh-oh, there are loan sharks. I feel like I need we made a bingo sheet where it was like Thai BL like cliches, and it's like a bingo thing, so when you're watching a show you can cross it off and try to get bingo. I feel like we need to add a square where there's like loan sharks involved.
Might be time to update again.
Yeah, because I was like watching Wanty Good Day and I was like, oh yeah, here are the loan sharks. Like.
Yeah. I was watching one where one of the characters was a loan shark,
Oh,
and then I think there's another one coming out where somebody's a loan shark.
see, that's the new engineering major.
Loan shark?
Yeah, we've moved on, but yeah, the loan sharks they come and they threaten Tong because remember he's in some sort of debt and he's stressing because he's trying to call Ming and Ming's not answering, and then Ming and Joe they go to like a meeting to talk about some movie that's gonna be created, and Ming is funding the movie basically so Joe can get like the leading role, is my understanding.
I love this level of petty.
I know. He's just like, yeah, I have the money to make a whole movie for you, so we're gonna do that to like spite Tong.
Which is kind of interesting. So back when Ming held Joe captive in like his office or whatever, like way back before the accident, like he said that he would do this for him at that point anyway. I'm curious. Like obviously I feel like it would have outweighed the blacklisting that Joe had,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm curious how any of this would have played out otherwise.
Yeah.
Because I think it would have not been as easy for Ming to find out about it being Joe's back. And
That's true.
like very clearly, like it was obvious, I think, to us that like Ming was already like head over heels for Joe, but I don't think it was obvious to Ming or Joe. Um,
Mm-mm.
so it would have been really interesting to see how that played out instead.
Yeah, we could have skipped a couple steps, but then who knows? Things might not
Hmm.
have progressed as smoothly.
Hmm.
And Tong shows up, he's really salty about this role being given to Joe. And so he invites Joe and Ming to like the movie premiere of the last movie that they all made together. And Joe did the stunt work for that. And then as like credits roll, Joe and Ming, they're really excited. They're getting ready for Joe's name to pop up. And it never does. It's not there. It's not in the credits. And Ming is pissed about it. Um, they like Tong is like doing some like interview like after the movie ends, and you can tell Ming just wants to like knock him out, but Joe stops him because like all the press is there and stuff.
Time,
And
dude.
yeah, and at this part in the show, I'm just like, I'm so ready for. I'm okay with Ming being crazy, but now I want Ming to be crazy on Joe's behalf, you know? So then they meet with Tong, and surprise, he brings Ming's mom, which they didn't know about. So now we can meet, or maybe we met the mom already. I think we did, but um, she basically accuses Joe of being a gold digger, and it's not good. And then Joe is just like, oh, like when our contract is over, like I'm leaving, bye. And he tries to end things with Ming because he's just like, I'm like so tired. Like we face all these obstacles, and like now your parents don't want us to be together. And they're extremely wealthy and it's just like it's too much. And then he goes home and he cries in his mom's arms. Sad.
Interestingly, this scene is a little different in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of mom, it's Ming's sister.
Oh.
Yeah, so in the book, I'd say she's maybe not as great as she is in the show.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, she comes in not necessarily to be involved. Tong just kind of uses her as like a pawn to make Ming feel guilty.
So do they still accuse Joe of being a gold digger or
Yeah, I think so.
okay. Okay. Because I do think like that's kind of what Mike is thinking too, hence the reason why he had Joe over that one time and it was just like, why is my brother spending so much money on you? So
Hmm.
yeah, it seems like a lot of the family might think that. But I mean, yeah, it's too much for Joe, understandably. And of course, I mean, you don't want to piss someone off who you're trying to borrow money from. So at, Ming's family home, Ming tells Tong, he's like, I'm not lending you any money. And Ming's dad is there, and Ming just straight up tells his dad that he's dating a man, which I guess was kind of like it was kind of like an open secret. Like he didn't say anything about it before. Everyone in his family knew, but this is the first time he's like directly addressing it.
Hmm.
So that's gonna cause some issues, I guess.
Just a couple.
Yeah. And then we get this like ominous the secretary he like tells Mike he's like, "Oh, Ming said if something like this happens, remember the promise you made him." So, I don't know. We just get that little bit of lore. And then Joe and Sol, they go to celebrate Joe's mom's birthday. And him and Sol, they kind of talk about like his relationship with Ming. And Ming's been like MIA for like a week now. And like Joe hasn't been able to contact him. And Sol's just like, oh, I care about you and I'll always be there to like support you. And then Joe gets a text from Ming that Ming's waiting for him at like their apartment. And he shows up, but it's Mike that's there. And Mike is like, "Hey, Ming is like locked in the family house because he told our father about your relationship." So it wasn't Ming ignoring Joe. It was him being like held captive slightly.
Yeah.
Honestly, slight taste of his own medicine, but you know, I don't support holding people captive. And so while this is happening, someone came to talk to Joe's mom and they told her about like the arrangement that he has with Ming for the money. And the mom is very upset. Um and she's just like, I don't want you to do this. Like she's also probably sad cuz she thought that like Joe had found someone that he loved, but then it was like turns out to be this contractual thing, from her
Yeah.
point of view.
Yeah, that would upset me as a mom too.
Mhm. And yeah, she's just like, "Oh, like we didn't need to live in a house this nice." Like she feels like, he didn't need to do that. He's putting himself at extra risk. And she gets really mad and she like leaves.
Yeah, I think at one point doesn't she say like she'd rather die than him do this?
Yeah, it's like, oh, that's harsh.
Yeah, I get it, but like
But
it's a bit dramatic at that moment.
yeah, but that kind of was the option at the time was
Yeah.
it was either Joe takes this agreement or the mom dies, because she can't get weekly treatment. And then Joe calls Mike and like accuses him, I guess, I don't know, of like showing his mom the evidence, and Mike was like, "No, it wasn't me." And like to prove it, like I'll take you to go see Ming. Like I'll sneak you in. And so they do that, and Ming is just like super sick in bed. And Ming tells Mike that old Joe is new Joe. And then the dad shows up and he starts a fight, and because Joe is there. And Ming, he while this is happening, he throws up, and then he starts looking like a real like messed up, like super super sick. And then bear with me, they take him to a hospital, and then Joe's like, "Oh my god, like I hope you'll be okay." And then Ming starts laughing, and I guess this was like a part of his and Mike's plan. I was confused by this whole scene, to be honest.
I think part of it was is they needed to get Ming out of the house, and the way to get him out of the house was to get him in the hospital.
Yeah, it seems very over the top, but I guess
Um,
it worked.
yeah, because so the reason Ming was sick to begin with was because he went on a hunger strike. He didn't eat for
Right.
like that whole week. So
Right. Yeah. So, okay, I guess their plan worked. And then Ming's mom shows up in the hospital, and then she seems okay with him and Joe. And I was confused at this at first, but then I was like, "Oh, she wasn't mad at them for like a homophobic reason. She was mad at them because she thought that Joe was taking advantage of Ming's money, like the gold digger thing." But now I
mhm.
think she's like, "Oh, he actually cares about him." Or at least that's my interpretation.
That was mine too.
Okay. Yeah, because she's just like suddenly like okay with them. And I'm like, okay, I guess that would make sense why.
Yeah, it's either that or she sees that Ming is very determined, and also Joe came to like help.
Mm-hmm. Right.
There's there's no bad intentions there. Um,
Yeah.
that we can see.
Yeah, it's enough for her, at least.
Yeah.
And then Mike gives Ming and Joe some sketchy documents. And then back at Ming's house, he gives his father the sketchy documents. And apparently these sketchy documents they're proof of Tong doing some sort of like financial fraud.
Mhm.
What is this part? It gets a little confusing. But he says he will give it to his father. He'll give the documents to his father if his father stops messing with his life. So it's kind of a trade. He's like, "Here's this evidence. I'll give it to you if you you know, basically let me date who I want to date."
What that really is him saying, "I won't go public with it,"
Right. Yeah.
because it's because he's married into the family, it would affect
Mhm.
the public opinion of the family for that to go public,
Right,
and
right.
that's why. That's why that's a good trade-off.
Okay. Yeah, that totally checks out. Um and of course, Tong kind of threatens back his spot in the entertainment industry and also reveals that May is pregnant. Ugh, God, what timing?
Mhm.
And so he asked Ming not to risk their reputation for the sake. He's like, "Don't do it for me, but do it for your niece or nephew." And then May comes down and she's like, why are you leveraging my child?" And she's just like, "Ming, you should do whatever you need to do." And yeah, that's sweet of her.
Yeah.
But oh my god. It's like so manipulative of Tong because he's just like, "Yeah, Ming isn't wrapped around my finger anymore, but he loves May and he will probably like still, do
Yeah.
something for our child."
Mhm.
And so at the end, Ming's choice is he leaves his family, which in turn he kind of leaves his money, and he leaves with Joe. He's kind of kicked out essentially, because
Mhm.
he chooses Joe over the rest of them. And his he has to like fire his secretary because he's like his secretary is like I'll still work for you, and then Ming's just like I don't have any money, but Mike is looking for a secretary, and so he goes to work for Mike, which is great because then they can continue their sexual tension.
Yeah. I love that they added that in because none of that like is in the book at all.
Yeah. No, I just love it. The more like gay couples you put in here, just makes it more fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then okay. So then Tong's secretary serves May divorce papers, and she goes to confront him, and she's just like you couldn't have done this, given this to me yourself, like what are you thinking, like why are you divorcing me? And he kicks her out, and she's just like if I didn't have money, would you have married me? And he just goes, you already know the answer.
Him so much.
Dude, he's like later on we learn the reason for this, why he does this, but I'm just like, bro, you're gonna serve your pregnant wife divorce papers and not even like have the decency to like do it to her face, you know? And then also
Hmm.
just like be so rude to her.
Yeah. So a lot of this with Tong plays out totally different in the book. Um,
Uh,
I don't remember the specifics between him and May. Uh, I'm pretty sure they get a divorce, but she's like fine with it
okay.
because
Honestly,
he
that's how
sucks.
this should have
Yeah,
ended.
that's I get most of the changes, but I feel like Tong didn't deserve the redemption arc that he may or may not be getting. Um,
Uh, that's exactly my feelings.
because he does not get a redemption arc in the book.
Think, okay. Just knowing that, I will finish the book because
Yeah.
that's like the one thing the show just did not do for me, where I was like craving this revenge against him, and ugh, it doesn't really happen.
Mhm.
But this part specifically, I was like, oh my God, this guy, like, I hate him so much.
Mhm. So in the book, there's no like loan sharks. So
Oh,
none
okay.
of none of the scenes with the loan sharks happen.
Okay. Okay, interesting, because that is going to be the next entire episode.
Yeah. That's why I sat there very confused during
Like,
that episode.
you're
What
like,
is
what?
happening?
This is like the second to last episode, and we're just like, okay, loan shark subplot now. So May, she leaves, and as she leaves, this like sketchy van pulls up, and Tong is like, he's like tweaking. So he bursts into Joe's like training gym, and Joe's there, and he's begging Joe to like help him and convince Ming to give him the money. And Joe's just like, well, like Ming doesn't have money anymore. And Tong's just like, oh, do it not for me, but for the sake of my child. And then the loan sharks show up, and he's just like, they're gonna kill me. And I don't know why. Probably because Joe's a saint, but he beats
Exactly
up
why.
the yeah, that's the only reason why. Um, he beats up the loan sharks, and he helps Tong run. And he disguises himself as Tong, like he takes his like hat and stuff, and because their backs look similar, the sharks accidentally take Joe back to their house instead. And of course, like Ming pulls up, and Tong is there, and Ming finds out what happened. Um and then so back at their little shark house, they're about to kill Joe, and then Ming calls from Tong's phone. He's like, I'll don't do anything. I'll bring the money. And then the sharks start asking for even more money, which is a bummer because Ming literally doesn't have like any money at all anymore. So they just kind of like bluff a bit.
Mhm.
And then of course because they don't have the money, they go to Ming's dad for help. He won't help. And so Ming storms out. He's like, "Fine, I'll take care of it." And so he brings probably like all the money he has left in like a bag in exchange for Joe's safety. And it's not the full amount, but he's just like, I will give you this much money just for that one guy. Like, and he's basically just like, uh, the Tong money stuff, that's his own problem, but like, just for this one guy, I'll like give you this money. And then at that moment, the police show up, and the sharks, of course, think that Ming called the police, and then Joe, he kind of uses that confusion to break free, and he starts beating people up, and he tells Ming to run. Which first of all, I feel like he could have maybe just not have done that.
I think if they didn't run, they were gonna get shot. Um,
Yeah.
but also, Ming was gonna trade places with Joe,
Oh,
was the
he was gonna
plan.
trade places.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's here, you can have this money, but also we'll trade places. Because the logic would make sense that like his dad would pay for him to be free, right?
Oh, okay. I like completely misunderstood that. But
Yeah.
then Ming would be Joe's stand-in.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Right? Full circle.
Thematic. Okay, well, either way, none of this
Heartbreaking.
ends.
No.
Yeah. None of this ends up happening because while they were running, the loan shark shoots at Ming, but Joe jumps in front of him and takes the bullet for him. Joe, try not to die challenge.
Yeah, about that. I remember sitting there going, none of this is in the book. I don't know
Yeah.
what to expect anymore. Did they really just kill him?
Yeah. Because then, like, the last thing we see for that episode is Joe. He's in the hospital. He's having like this out of body experience. Of course, the shaman is there. And he's just like, you can either go through this door and go back to your life, or you can go through this other door and be like free of everything forever. Which honestly, like if I was Joe, I probably would have just been like, nah, man, this is too much. Let me just like move on, to the afterlife.
I would have gone back to Ming.
Of course.
I wouldn't have taken more than like 2 seconds to think about it. Been like, I'm going this way.
I
But
just think
also,
like it's probably just so tiring to be Joe and like everything he's had to deal with.
yeah, I mean it's tiring, but also I don't know. I for me it's not even really going back to Ming so much as I got a lot of shit to do.
Mm,
A lot of shit I want to do.
yeah.
Um I don't want to end it yet.
Yeah, and he like so he has his like friends, next to his hospital bed, and he has all these flashbacks of all these good times with Ming. And so that's what makes him choose to return to life. Um
Which I'm calling bullshit first because the shaman just spent a while showing him like all the bad and he almost goes in the other door and that was some trauma for me.
yeah, I know. He like literally started walking like towards the light, you know.
Mhm.
We're gonna ignore why the shaman is there. It doesn't, I don't know.
I don't know.
No reason. He's just there. Um but fortunately for us, um Joe, he returns to life, and um which is, also great for his friends. And so like Ming is kind of like, nursing him after, while he's like in the hospital bed, he's like feeding him, and then Soul and Woot show up, and it's like kind of awkward because, they're not on good terms with Ming still. And so like Ming leaves the room and Soul follows him out, and he's just like yeah, I tried to win Joe over, but he still chose you. Like he's just like, no matter what, Joe will always choose you, so like please like protect him.
Glad you
Which I
caught
thought,
on.
yeah, I thought that was like nice at least, because like while watching the show, you're kind of just like, okay, is Soul's intentions, are they like because they're friends, or is it just because Soul like wants to get in Joe's pants? But at least with this line, they kind of confirm like that, I don't know, Soul, at least in the show, Soul is just like kind of he's like a good person.
Yeah.
Um It's nice that he's just like admitting defeat, I guess.
I'm gonna bow out. There's
Yeah.
clearly too much fate happening here for me. Um,
Yeah. He's like, yeah, you're always one. Can't compete with that, so treat him well. And then Joe's mom comes into the waiting room and Ming is there and um this is the first time they've seen each other since they fought and the reason why it took her a while to see Joe is because she was afraid that like Joe wouldn't want to see her because they had the last conversation they had wasn't very good.
mhm.
And um we see oh okay, so yeah, this is just in the waiting room. She's working up the courage to go in and see Joe. And then Ming's mom is the one who comes and sees her first. And it was like, "Hey, I was the one that sent you that evidence of the contract. I did it because I thought that Joe had like other intentions and was just like using my son, but now I see that they truly love each other." It's kind of nice that the moms are like, you know,
The bonding moment.
friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then they walk in together and like apologize to each other and make up. Um, Everyone's just like making up and stuff, which is good because this is the last episode. So I like when things end happily.
Yes.
And then Joe and Ming they go to like the hospital rooftop and they see a shooting star and they kind of cry and Ming apologizes to Joe for everything and Joe forgives him and he's just like, but you need to forgive yourself as well. Um, Ming definitely has a lot of regrets. And Joe is discharged from the hospital. But the secretary is the one to pick him up. And he takes him to Ming's dad. And he's, you know, he's like scared. Um, and Ming's dad is like, why did you turn down the money that Mike offered you? And I must have missed this. There was a lot happening during this part, but I guess at some point, Mike's dad offered Joe, or Mike offered Joe money through his dad, I think to stop seeing Ming. I don't know. I missed this completely.
Vaguely remember that happening. I think that was like way before. It was either gonna be when they met, when like the first time when like Ming was already like being held captive. It was either
Yeah.
then when like Mike showed
Yeah.
up at the apartment. I don't know if it happened then or if it happened before then, because they met once before that, didn't they?
I honestly have no idea.
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. I literally only like this part, he just asked Joe why he turned down the money that Mike offered him, and I was like, when did Mike offer him money? I don't know. There's too much going on. I'm sorry if I missed this, but then he like soft threatens Joe with like a gun on the table and he's like, I can make you disappear. And he basically like the reason why he's doing this is because he said that um he he doesn't so Ming once like he almost lost Ming when old Joe died because he was so distraught after the death and he was like he made new Joe promise to not disappear and put his son in that position again. And then they have family dinner together and everyone's happy.
So instead of like this whole kidnapping nonsense, whatever, a lot of this comes down. So the dad disapproves in the book. The dad disapproves of like the relationship, right? Um, but then they have this family dinner with the grandfather at like his place, like on the military base or whatever it is.
uh
And the grandfather like kidnaps Joe and makes him come to dinner.
okay.
And it was one of those of like, I don't really care what you guys do. Get over this problem. And so because he like accepts it, then the dad has to just kind of just deal with it.
Okay.
It was really funny how that played out because
Yeah.
dad's trying to make this big fuss and like the grandfather who really runs the family is just like shut up and sit down.
That honestly makes more sense because this I was just like, I would not be happily having a dinner with a man who just pulled a gun on me, but okay.
Yeah, no, definitely read the book because the way this plays out is just amazing.
Yeah. And then also the dad, he seems, I guess, to be like a softie on the inside too, because he ended up saying he'll pay Tong's debts and as like a baby shower gift.
Ugh,
Tong
ugh.
never has to learn anything. Well, okay, this is so then like because the next scene, Tong comes out. He thanks Joe for everything, and he was like, "I will put your name back in the movie credit." And he's standing next to a pool, and I know I've been watching too much Only Friends because I was like, they should have pushed that damn man into the pool.
Yes.
Like, just something. Like, Tong does all this like, heinous shit and never has to, like, answer for it. Like, he never has to learn. Like, even with the loan shark things, like, he wasn't the one that suffered. It was Joe that suffered once again. Like, everything Tong does, the only people that suffer are, like, Joe and Ming and May.
It's so much more satisfying in the book. I cannot wait for you to get to that part.
I know. Because then May comes out and she's like, I haven't signed the divorce paper yet, and I'll give you a second chance. And I'm like,
Ugh,
no, this man
woman.
sucks. He sucks. And so the reason why he did the whole divorce thing and was mean to her is because I guess he was like, he didn't want this to reflect poorly on their family, like his debts and stuff. So he was like doing it to protect her. But whatever. I don't care. I call bullshit. It's not good enough of an excuse.
No, no. I don't buy into it either.
No. So yeah, that is my number one gripe with the show is that Tong does not get the ending that he deserved.
Nope. So,
Don't try to redeem him because I don't care. And then um so oh yeah, there's like a little Ming versus Mike for the secretary. And Mike's like, "Can I have him because you already have Joe?" And there's romantic tension.
I love it.
I know. Ming and Mike, what or no, Mike and oh, I don't even know the secretary's name. I just keep
Jim,
calling him Jim. Okay, Mike and Jim. Yeah. They could have a
the
little side
tension.
story.
Yeah, the tension that was great there. I kind of wished we would have seen like at the very end like a stronger hint to something, but
Yeah.
I'll accept it.
Yeah, I'll accept it too. It's like fun, little
Mhm.
little hints. Um and so then this is like farther later down the line, but Joe and Ming they have a meeting for that movie that Ming's funding again. And Joe's like, "Okay, I'm in, but I have to audition with like everyone else." Because of course Joe is not here for the nepotism and
No, he's
he
too
gets he's
prideful.
yeah, he's very prideful and he's confident he'll get the role anyway, which he does. So,
Mhm.
yeah, good for him. And then he tells Woot that him and Ming are officially together, and Woot's like mostly supportive, you know. He's like at this point he's just kind of like, yeah, I can't stop you as long as he treats you well, then,
You've already
I'll have your
died once.
back.
What's the worst that could happen this time?
Yeah, right. And Soul is he's going back to Korea. Okay, here's like a random ass scene. He's gonna go back to Korea. Some random guy picks him up in a car, and I'm not sure am I supposed to know who this is, or it kind of feels like a setup for a spinoff, to be honest.
I have
Like
no idea who it is, so.
he kind of looked like the makeup artist, but I was like, I don't know why it would be the makeup artist because like during this scene there is kind of some like romantic hints, that him and this random ass guy we've never seen before are like involved or like they have like something. I don't know.
I mm, I don't remember, but
Yeah. I the
Nope.
first time I watched it I didn't really pick it up, but the second time I was like who is this? And why are we like focused on him? But maybe it was the makeup artist. I don't know, to be honest. And finally, Ming is cooking dinner in the apartment. And this is kind of funny. His mom just shows up like out of the blue. And they're like, "What are you doing here?" But then they have like dinner and they have some wine together. Um, and it's nice to see Ming get along with his family finally.
Mhm.
And the first day of shooting for the movie came around and Joe is late and everyone's like worried, but then him and Ming show up together and it's happy and cute and domestic and whatever. Um,
Mhm.
and then they watch the movie and I don't know, we just see a bunch of like flashbacks of like filming and we just see a bunch of flashbacks of like the whole show in general. So maybe the movie was the show we just watched. Really
It
long movie, but
I would hope they'd cut some of it.
yeah, right. Just a documentary actually. And then that night, Ming and Joe are at home and they're eating dinner. And Joe kind of starts to wonder like why he was brought back, like, very
Mhm.
fair question, like why me? But he said like either way, like he wants to start over with Ming and they make out and then Ming jokes, he's like, "Oh, now we don't have to do it from the back anymore." And then they have sex on the table outside and they live happily ever after, maybe. And the last scene of the show is just like the table thumping. So, and that's my stand-in.
That last scene was so funny.
I know. It's like a fairly like lighthearted scene to end on for the show, but
Mhm.
I do like that they gave us the whole last episode just to be like happy and in love and stuff.
Mhm.
So,
So I did just quickly go back to the last episode to see who was the guy in the car
uh-huh.
with Soul.
Uh-huh.
Um and then I went back to the first episode to go look at the scene with the makeup artist, and I'm pretty confident that's the same person.
Okay. So, okay. That because I was like, he kind of looks like the makeup artist who we like met a couple times like in the beginning of
Y-
the show and then didn't really talk to after. Um,
Yeah, I definitely didn't catch that. I thought that was some random person.
yeah. I wonder if like they're I feel like they were kind of hinting at like Soul and the makeup artist then having a thing.
Yeah,
Because at
I could
least
see
like I
that.
don't know. Yeah, that's the pickup scene. I was like, oh, it was like kind of read as like, oh, Soul met someone new. So
Yeah. Can I say, one of the
yeah.
things I am most thankful for is that nobody told Joe's mom the truth.
Oh, about old Joe being new Joe?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Because one, I don't know that she would have bought it, but when she finally went, yeah, okay, that makes sense, because eventually it would click, the devastation that would have caused that woman for no reason.
Yeah.
She's better off not knowing.
No, I think a lot of people are better off not knowing just because it is so like unbelievable.
Yeah, but even without it being unbelievable, she sat for 2 years. Her son tried to commit suicide, right? For after a fight they had, right? And
Mhm.
so she sat in the hospital for 2 years, gets in all this debt trying to get him back. Think she has him back for at least a year just to find
Mhm.
out that's not really her son, and now she has to go through the grieving process that he did
Uh
die, like
That would be
after,
horrible.
right? Like the trauma from that, it's just I'm glad she didn't find out. She's
Yeah.
happy. Joe got a mom. Um
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and he has the excuse of having, like, memory loss, so
right? Like it's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah, it all worked out. But yeah, I am glad that they kind of established, like, a new family and could live happily together. 'Cause that would have been a whole other mess.
Yeah. But I love the show. This is absolutely my favorite from 2024. I know we still have
Mhm.
what, like 5 months, 4 months, 4 months
Yeah.
left of the year. But I
I don't
don't.
know
Nothing's gonna
what
beat
could
this.
top No, I don't know what could possibly top this, to be honest.
No.
It's so well crafted and shot, and the acting, everything about it, I was just, like, completely blown away.
Mhm.
I will say, though, this is just, like, a personal gripe, but the theme song, like, just doesn't match the show at all, in my opinion. Like, dude,
I
it's some guy, like, wailing, and I'm like, "What?"
I forgot about that because I always skip it.
Yeah, I would skip it too, but I would, like, not skip it fully, and I would just get to a point, it would just be some guy doing some, like, like, rock anthem. You would just be screaming, and I was like, "What is?" Doesn't shoot like fit the vibe of the show, but
No, we should have had something more like drama, like heavy.
yeah, yeah. But that's just the one thing where I thought it was kind of funny. I was like, "This is interesting theme song."
Yeah, I wish they had stuck with the original storyline of what happens to Tong. I think that's my biggest gripe.
Yeah, I honestly, even though I haven't finished the novel, I agree. I truly it doesn't feel rewarding as the viewer to have the main villain character not learn his lesson and then be kind of accepted back into the family and society and stuff, and it's just like he hasn't learned anything. He hasn't like suffered at all, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, I definitely wish they would have treated him differently there.
Yeah. So, now that we've watched it, I don't know if I told you the real reason I started reading the novel.
Why?
So, I saw a tweet at one point that was concerned that Joe ends the show in a wheelchair, like, permanently. And that
Okay.
f and I thought that was what was gonna happen,
Okay.
and because I think it was in maybe the pilot episode,
Mhm.
which I never watched the pilot, so I have no idea, but I think in the pilot, they show Joe in the wheelchair, which is what happens
Mhm.
after he gets shot, right?
Right, in the
Um,
hospital, he does, yeah, use a wheelchair
yeah.
for, like, his stay there.
So, so I saw that tweet and I was like, "I can't sit here for the next, like, 6 episodes wondering if this man is gonna end up in a wheelchair in the end."
You're like, "I'm just
Right?
gonna find out myself."
It's literally what I did, that's why I started reading, that's why I didn't hold off, because I would have
Yeah.
been able to hold off if it wasn't for that stupid tweet I saw,
Hmm.
because I was
Yeah,
like,
I
"I need
loved
to know."
the theories are always so fun when watching a show like this.
Yeah, because like, obviously, like, people that are in a wheelchair, absolutely nothing against it, it's your life, like, I'm sure you don't wanna be in a wheelchair, right? But I was like, that means something bad happened, and that he doesn't get, like, a full good story,
Yeah.
right? It was either new Joe, something bad happens, and thing like, that's like, with him getting shot, I was like, especially when I found out how much they changed the ending, I was like, is that what we're gonna do now?
Well, it's
Like,
hard to, like, watching a character who you're rooting for who's suffered so much, and then at the end being afraid that they're just gonna, like, suffer even more, you
right?
know?
So, it was that, or I think I was at that point, I was at they hadn't found the body yet, so I was like,
Mm.
is he really, like, in some small, like, village in, like, rural, like, Thailand, like the
Right.
other Joe? Like, is he just paralyzed? Is that why he hasn't, gotten his way back yet?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. That's also a very, like, believable theory.
Right? So that's where I was like, it could go either way of, like, the old Joe shows up and they have their Freaky Friday body swap thing,
Yeah.
and so that's where I was like, I have to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stupid Twitter.
I know. That's how I, like, feel about, yeah, like, 4 Minutes airing now too. I'm like, "Ugh, I could read the theories, but it's just gonna drive me crazy," so
So the theories don't help me because I feel like I'm missing something because people are coming up with some really elaborate theories.
yeah.
And and I'm like, "Where are you getting this information from?" Um,
Like, my sources.
right? And some of it is I just am not picking up on context clues a lot because I went back
Mhm.
and rewatched, like, part of the first episode and I went, "Oh, that's where people are getting some of this information from." The
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah, I'm sure they watched it, like, multiple times, have to, like, pick up
Yeah.
on some of those things, but I mean, that's what I like about watching a show twice, because like, this show, I watched the first time blind, and I was just, like, completely blindsided by everything that was happening, but then when I
Mhm.
watched it the second time, I, was able to pick up on some of that foreshadowing and stuff that was intentional.
Yeah. So you start to pick up on the foreshadowing. I think for me as well, the second time through, I picked up on a lot more of Ming's emotions.
Yeah, his motivations and stuff too. Because like, first
Yeah.
time watching, I was like, "Oh, yeah, this dude's just evil." And then I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, no, he's not."
Yeah, because there'd be like subtle ways that he like would look at Joe and like how he would interact. And I'd be like, I didn't catch this. And I was like, Up is such a good actor.
Yeah, he is. He's so good at just, like, portraying very nuanced,
Hmm.
like, emotions.
I'm sad that the show is over.
I
I
am too.
If there's any show that I could rewatch for the first time, like with fresh eyes, it would be this one.
Yeah, 100% agree.
I would love to watch this for the first time
I
again.
I envy the people who haven't watched it yet.
Go watch it. I know we just
Mm.
ruined like everything, but go watch it anyway.
Yeah, go rewatch it or whatever.
Yeah. And I guess the best news is I think we talked about this last episode, but Up and Poom are already in talks for their next show. So we are
Yeah,
at least getting Up Poom again. Um, so
I
there's that to look
do
forward to.
hope it's another, like, thriller.
Yeah, I hope it's another one that like stretches like their acting and isn't just some random fluff. But
Yeah, 'cause, I feel like thriller is, like, it's so I love watching it, but it takes a really good actor, really specific
mhm.
actors to be able to portray that, and they've showed that they are above and beyond, and so I'm just like, "Okay, like, do it again, please."
Yeah, I feel like Up is pretty intentional with the shows he picks
Yeah.
to do. So I think no matter what we get, it'll be something that's interesting at least.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't I don't know that he'd get like just like a run of the mill office worker type of a show or something like that, you know?
Mhm.
Because even
Yeah.
like Lovely Writer, like it was on the fluffier side, but it's still like there was a lot of like nuance to the characters there too.
Yeah, it was very subversive, especially for the
Mhm.
time that it came out.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I'm
I with
excited.
whom I don't know him as well, but I don't think Up would steer him in the wrong direction anyway.
No.
No.
If they're together, it can't go wrong.
Yeah, I'll watch whatever it is.
Yeah, me too.
So, but while we wait, you can find us on our socials. On Instagram and TikTok, we're bl.in.the.air. Um, and then on Twitter, we're just BL in the air. You can also find us on Discord. The link for that will be in the link tree as well as the links for all of our other socials. And we're streaming wherever you're currently listening. If you're on Spotify, make sure to give us a rating, drop a comment, or take one of our polls. We usually have one going. And catch you next week.
Bye.
Bye.